Welcome everyone, it's Ken Burgin here from SilverChef, and today we've got our financial support Q&A for cafes, restaurants and food service. Two excellent guests who are trying to keep up with this as much as anyone's able to. Canio Muscillo, an accountant in Brisbane. He's got lots of hospitality clients, so he's keeping very close to what's happening in our industry. And Chris Green, exactly the same. She and her partner have a kitchen design and company, and very close to the industry. And because she had a bit of time on her hands, she decided to start a bookkeeping agency as well. Anyway, it's great to have them along. I'll get them to say hi in a minute. We're just a few minutes before the hour. We'll be starting on the hour in 4 minutes' time. I know we got quite a few people coming back for regularly on the webinars. That really makes me happy. And you'll be pleased to know that we now have a page on the SilverChef website where all the future webinars are listed, and also where you can access replays as well. So we'll be dropping you a link to those later on. I can see a few people already voting in the poll, which is great. You'll see that on your screen. Be interested to get the responses, and once we've had our votes with that, we'll show everyone and we can compare and see what the trends are with that. If you're new to webinars, you can control where the sound comes out. There's a little audio setting, and also one of the best parts of today is ask questions. So you see the little Q&A button on the little black control panel. Just click in that, you can drop questions in there straight away. Nikki said, is Canio supposed to have 2 screens? Okay, I don't know what your settings are there, Canio.
No, I don't want to hog the limelight, so no.
It's all good, it's been fixed, but yeah.
It's been fixed, it's been fixed, cool. Okay, thank you. All right. And just a few tips for getting the best out of webinars. Take notes, write things down. We'll be sending you a replay afterwards, and we'll send you slides. But you know how it works with brainwaves coming into your mind, and then they leap out again 20 seconds later. Just write stuff down if you can. We'll have links to click as we go through. So you'll see the chat box pops up on the side of your screen, maybe there already. Questions in the Q&A box. If you've got a brainwave, share it in the chat as well. The chat is open for you to put comments in there. You can interact with other people. If you've got some examples of things, try and keep the questions in the Q&A box, but wherever. You're voting in a poll already, which is great. And I know being in hospitality, you've got enormous amounts of patience. We're certainly having to be tested on that one at the minute, aren't we? So, yeah. And just to let you know about our next webinar, which is coming up next Tuesday, hot topic, landlords and leases. I'm pretty sure the government's releasing some new policies and relief in that very area right as we speak. Actually, I know the Prime Minister's on the TV, so we'll update you on all of that. But this is a chance to talk to a lawyer and a business broker who've had many years of experience wrestling with landlords about all these details. It's a pretty urgent issue that we all need to be looking at. So just 1 minute to go, and then we'll start the webinar, and then I'll be recording it, of course, and you're welcome to have a look again, listen in on questions and answers, and also share it with your friends who weren't able to come. So anyone who would like to vote in the poll, just a couple more minutes before we get started. Getting some good number of responses coming in there, thank you. All right, we'll get started. Welcome everyone, Ken Burgin here from SilverChef, and today we've got a very important webinar, financial support question and answer session. We've got two great guests with us, Chris Green, Director of Restaurant Bookkeepers Australia, extensive background in hospitality on the manufacturing and design side, so she knows the rhythms of how this industry works. She knows all the players, she knows all our secrets too, because having a bit of time on her hands, she set up the Restaurant Bookkeepers network and is kind of deep into the numbers and understands a lot of things that maybe some of us don't. She'll look at a set of figures and understand whether we're doing well or not so well. Anyway, hi Chris, great to have you there. You'll see her on the screen.
Okay.
And we've got Canio, an accountant, also based in Brisbane, again, very close to the industry, lots of hospitality clients, and watching very closely what's happening and watching for all of us, as both of them are, you know, new policies being released, how things are changing. The government is being tested like never before, I guess, on having to be very flexible and my God, a Liberal government giving away these amounts of money, it's hard to believe, isn't it? Anyway. Nothing will be the same again. My background, restaurant cafe owner in Sydney, sold my businesses a fair few years ago and then was doing quite a bit of consulting work, and 4 years ago joined SilverChef, which I'm really enjoying. And of course this year, being the events manager, I had to change all my events from being real ones, face-to-face, to online ones like this, and very gratifying to have a huge response to these webinars. It's very, very, very pleasing, and I guess this is not going to change either. In some ways, lots of people are going to find new ways of gathering information, just as their kids are finding new ways of learning. And we won't ask you about how it's going with everyone at home together, but a few challenges there, I'm sure. Anyway, just a few tips if you're just joining us about the using your speaker where you can listen to your headphones or whatever, but that's how you'll hear the sound. And the Q&A button is a pretty important one. Feel free to already drop questions in the question box. I'll be asking those to our two experts, so yeah, anytime just drop those in. You'll also see a chat box there on the side where we've already put a couple of messages in there, and maybe our panel members, our helpers, could just drop a couple of welcome messages in there so people can see how it works. I've got several people here from our SilverChef team: Cole Sinclair, Nikki Smith, Sam Milievsky and Valerie Yang, all kind of behind the scenes to manage the panel and questions and those sorts of things. So share ideas, write notes, as I said, vote in the poll. We'll just close that in a second. And of course, I know how patient you all are, and click those links as we drop them into the chat too, because they'll open up websites of importance. So in the email that you'll get after this, probably by tomorrow, you'll have a replay of the webinar and you'll have all those links that we mentioned as well. Another important webinar coming up next Tuesday on landlords and leases. Something that's changing very fast. You know, the unbelievable really is happening, that government intervention in the terms of leases and the rights of tenants. It's quite amazing, and it's really important that everyone keeps up with that. So you're very welcome to come along to that. And Nikki, maybe if you or Kyle wouldn't mind dropping in that link for people to see where all our webinars are listed. You'll see links to enroll in webinars. You'll also see there links for replays of past webinars as well, all together on one page. And before we start, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone. I mean, this is just, it's really unbelievable, isn't it, what's going on? And yeah, it's testing all our emotions and our finances and everything. And thank you for being amazing, and everyone in their own special different way. But it's, yeah. And thanks for being here, you know, to gather up more information to make you and your business stronger as well. just before we start, I'd just like to mention a new initiative just really launched a couple of days ago by SilverChef in conjunction with InKind. We call it Safe Hospitality, and it's a way that you can buy credit from a favourite restaurant or cafe. They may be listed on the site. A lot of sites are joining it. If not, you can suggest that you'd like to, buy credit with them for $50, $100 or whatever, different options there. But there's absolutely no commissions or no kind of clipping the ticket or anything like that. But I really recommend you, and we'll drop that link in the chat as well for you so you can have a look at that. Okay. Let's get down to the business end of this. And first, we're going to get a quick survey from Canio about what's happening. Promise you we're not going to go line by line through all these things, but big picture, Canio, what's your feeling about the money that's flowing and what the government's doing? Because really, no one's actually got any money in their bank yet. No one's received anything, and it's kind of 2 weeks later. Give us your kind of feeling and your thoughts about this.
Yes, thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me on, and hello to Chris. It's interesting because you've got a lot of different people in your client base, and obviously this for my hospitality clients and for all us in this industry together, it's been a dramatic change. But what I can see what's happening is that you can see from stimulus 1 to stimulus 2, what's actually occurred is that I think the government from day one has started to think, well, hey, we need to save businesses. We need to keep people in work for as long as we possibly can. So the first part of the stimulus, I think, was, employees probably didn't get a lot of assistance there. And I think it was, let's try to keep these people in play. But as you can see from now, when we're starting to talk about, restaurants being closed and those that unfortunately can't really adjust themselves to takeaway, well, what's the point of a lot of business stimulus when there's no turnover and there's no employees there? So the idea is, as you can see now going forward, it's more about trying to get assistance to people who have lost their jobs, trying to get people who got businesses that are closed to, I guess, help them with their fixed costs. And obviously, hopefully, ScoMo is going to have some stimulus to the businesses regarding paying rent and so forth. But I think if you look at it, and we'll go through a few things later on, but some of these stimulus packages, like, for example, $150,000 write-off to buy new assets. Like, okay, 2 weeks ago, you might have actually thought about it, but to be honest, who really cares about paying $150,000?
Exactly. That's been the feedback that I've seen from everyone. It's like, I'm not buying anything.
That's right. So you can just see, like, honestly, 2 weeks ago, I had clients going, this is great. This isn't the time for me to go and buy that new pizza oven. But then the thing is, 2 weeks later, it's shut down. So you can see how the stimulus has been put through, is that it's very reactionary now. And I think as you get through to the next measures, stimulus 3, 4, 5, you'll start to see that it's really going to get down to the people and making sure that they can actually pay for their rent and pay their home loans and make sure there's food on the table. Yeah.
So out of that list you've got there, let's maybe leave apprentices out of it, because sadly apprentices seem to be the ones that are kind of the first let go, but there's certainly some big subsidies there. What would you say is priorities for people to start taking advantage of?
Yeah, okay, of course. Well, I think that the biggest contention, and obviously Chris will probably talk about it a bit more as well, so I won't go into the big depth of it, but is this cash flow boost. There's a lot of conjecture out there. What is it? Is it really, am I getting a check from the government? Please understand that this is an amount of money that's going to be credited to your ATO integrated client account. So you're not going to be getting a check in the mail necessarily. So in essence, how this is going to work is that if you have employed, so therefore if you have a look at your BAS, and obviously people like Chris are probably doing it for you, but if you pay wages, and even if you don't deduct any tax out of people's wages, you'll be eligible for this stimulus. But there's a lot of businesses out there who may not have wages. Now, hopefully most of the people that are on this call in the hospitality industry will have wages, but they probably won't have wages in September or even before that. So going to basically work. So the first stimulus payment will be on the 21st of April if you're a monthly remitter, or the 28th of April if you're a quarterly remitter. Now, what you will get is you'll get pretty much 100% of your withholdings of your March activity statement. If you're a monthly withholder, it'll be whatever you've deducted out of the March wages times by 3, and that's the amount of money that will go directly into your ATO client account. Now, you'll probably find that from January, January's a little bit slow, particularly in the hospital industry, but from January to March, you're still going to have sales because we haven't realistically lost a lot of sales prior to March. So you'll find that first payment, and it will be at least $10,000 that goes in your credit account, will probably be soaked up by your GST liability for that first quarter or month. So I don't see there's going to be a lot of respite in people's cash flow from that boost.
Okay.
But in total, just to finish that off, everyone will receive 20 grand at least as a credit on their account. And if their account is in credit, then they can get some cash flow rebate from the government.
Right. Now, there's a question from John. How long is the ATO deferral? ? 4 months ?
Yeah.
So what are we talking about there?
Interesting. Okay. So before this call, I thought, because things are changing, well, I was speaking to Chris off air, everything's changing so quickly. It's very hard for us so-called experts to even provide information because we don't even know what hymn book we're singing off. But I think this time last week, there was an ATO media release from the Commissioner saying that they're going to give 4 months deferral for all activity statements. And now that's obviously to be paid. You must still lodge. Please get that right. You must still lodge. And I think there's a couple of reasons why you should still lodge. You still need to know what liability you have anyway. It's a 4-month deferral on payment. Now, going back to the ATO today to make sure that still occurred, I couldn't find it anywhere on the COVID-19 site, except for some blanket small writing of saying that the ATO is going to help you with your tax payments. I've gone back to the media release. The media release, actually, to be quite humorously, it's been changed to say 6 months. Now, so what I will tell you about that is if you can get a piece of paper and a pen and write down this code. So if you go to ato.gov.au and in the search button, you type quick code, which is 61763. That goes to the media release, which is actually not part of the COVID-19 page. So it's 61763.
So we just put that number into the search bar, do we? Or
yeah. So you go to the ato.gov.au and up the top right-hand corner, there's a search. If you type in 61763, it'll bring you to this media release from the Commissioner. And it does say there in black and white that they're providing 6 months worth of payment deferrals. Now, calling the ATO and being on hold for, as I'm sure that Chris can understand this, it happens all the time, but finally got through to somebody who didn't really know what's happening. Surprise, surprise. And you know what? It's not really their fault anyway. They're as flabbergasted as us at the moment, but they said that it's still going to be on an opt-in case. So don't start to think that this is going to be an automatic 4-month or 6-month deferral.
Right.
You need to ring them up and say, hey, I've got a coffee shop. I can't pay my BAS, and you should, I'm not going to say you will, you should get 6-month payment deferral. She couldn't also talk to me about whether that's subsequent activity statements. So all she can tell, all the person on the ATO could tell me at the moment was any payment any payment request that you get from the 23rd of January onwards you're allowed to actually apply for this. So
coming back to what John's saying is, he's asking about 4 months. You're saying it could be 6 months.
I think it's 6 months.
Okay.
And John, just type in that number into the ATO, and you'll get that. So at least you've got something in writing. What I was worried about is trying to present here. I'm sure Chris has the same issue. And then, within 25 minutes, we're contradicted. So I'm trying to get things in writing. So I want the listeners to understand that I would print that out because it could change again. So,
sure. And I think you brought up a good point indirectly too here that much as people are thinking, I've got no money for anything, actually you need to invest some money with your bookkeeper or accountant to get help to navigating all this, because this is not just usually doing the BAS yourself or simple stuff like it was 6 months ago. This is, yeah.
And Ken, this is adding to our workload. The number of forums and webinars we're attending that's been issued by financial industry leaders and also the ATO and Fair Work. That's hours and hours of data we're trying to process in our head. We're trying to be across it, and it's a shifting target. So it certainly is adding to our workload. I'm learning a lot though.
Yeah. you wish you didn't have to, but some of it. Yeah, thanks. Good point. So Canio, you've got a long list there. What other things, thinking about when do I get some more money into my bank account, which other things there do you think are priorities for the cafe or restaurant owner?
Well, as a lot of my clients and I guess our listeners understand, GST is a killer for restaurants. So I think the first thing that you'd be looking at doing is, and we'll talk about this later on, but is your cash flow working out? Okay, well, I had to pay normally my GST by the 28th of April. We confidently can say now that you won't have to pay that instalment. Okay, so straight away, that's, I guess, reverse engineering some cash flow back in. So the deferrals is very important. The cash flow booster will be important. The instant asset write-off, forget about that. That's it really if you really want to give it a go. And they've got to 30th of June for that anyway, and we'll still be in this virus issue at that point. So I think the biggest other one is the Centrelink payments update, because the sole trader guy who might be running a coffee shop van who doesn't have any employees, he won't get the cash flow boost at all, or she won't get the cash flow boost. They'll have to literally prove to Centrelink that they have a downturn in their business and apply for JobSeeker. So JobSeeker is going to be the one that most of the people who have been affected, the baristas and the cooks and so forth. That's their only alternative at the moment. So
the self-employed operator, the consultant, or the someone the designer or someone like that, they've just got to go onto the JobSeeker.
There's nothing else I've been able to see. They don't apply. They can't get a cash flow boost because the fact that they don't have a W1 or W2 on their activity statement. So unfortunately, no money coming the door. It's the unselling and that's.
Chris, you got any comments on that one for the self-employed person?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I'm lucky I'm covered by companies and those sorts of things, but I've got close friends and associates that aren't, and they're just treated like an individual. So I wouldn't be surprised if something comes down the line, because there's a lot of people trying to shake that tree. So it might be in the future, probably not quick enough as everybody would like, but I don't think there's been a spotlight put on that, because they're really trying to, there's a client I've got that has, their situation is set up as a partnership. I wouldn't say that it's the smartest way to be set up. And they've got 3 businesses trading in that one partnership, which is a little bit messy, but that's how they've got it. And this is going to affect their ability to get certain benefits. Actually, I've got a question for you. This partnership that also employs employees under PAYG, will they be eligible for the cash flow boost?
So as long as the partnership has a W1 or W2 figure that comes up on their activity statement, they will get it, and that's the key at the moment. So, and there's also
comes back to the employees.
Sorry,
it comes back to a stimulus for keeping people in jobs. That's
right, but this is the problem, because this was the first announcement. This is the second announcement was basically like putting the first announcement on steroids. By the first part was only going to be half of what it is now, and 50% of the PAYG. The second part of it is just enhance that. So the idea is, I think the government thought that we need to give people jobs, and I think they tried to leverage off businesses to ensure that they can keep people employed. Because if stimulus package, I guess 3 or whatever is going to happen down the track, which basically says the government's going to look after you and pay you 80% of your work, whatever Boris Johnson's suggested, I think what would have happened then is a lot of businesses down to the downturn would have basically stood down a lot more of the employees, because they would have said, listen, you're probably going to get more money by just me standing you down and going down to the unemployment office.
So I'm saying speed. Speed for cash is the priority here. So is it now a good time in the discussion to actually go to that point of how to get cash fast? So we can see there's a lot of things on the table there.
Let's just before we do that, I realised I didn't put the results of the poll we asked at the beginning up, and I want to do that because just so we can just process that. But this is spot on, Chris, what you're saying. So if you have a look on your screen now, you'll see the results of that poll you did at the beginning. So a majority of people, large majority, haven't asked their bank yet, and we better ask you two about best way forward with that. majority of people haven't asked the tax office, and they haven't. No one's actually asked to postpone or change rent. So interesting. Well, let's just kind of hold those answers in our mind as we keep going forward.
I'm just going to head up. Yeah, I'm just going to head up the conversation as business owners and business leaders. So you're leading people. You need to be making very swift decision as to where you're headed. And I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, and I don't want to kick a dog when it's down. But there's a 4-step plan that I've been implementing in certain things that I'm invested in. First one is reduce. Second one is consolidate. Third one is hibernate, which we're all about to go into hibernation. And the fourth one is rebirth. So if you can hold a higher level plan to your life and your business right now, that will keep you focused on where you need to go forward. These 4 points might not be for you. Just get 4 points and focus on them. The rest will work itself out and drive yourself forward.
For us, and we might drop those words into the chat for
Sure.
everyone too.
Number 1 is reduce. Cut staff, reduce overheads, get rid of any crap that you don't need. Now's the time for a cleanse. You've got a reason to cleanse. Second one is consolidate. If you've got 2 locations and it's better to consolidate to 1, but you keep your business ticking along, do that. Consolidate, merge things together. If it was 2, make it 1. Third one is hibernate. We're going to go into hibernation, got to shut the doors, can't mingle. We're going to have to spend time thinking about where we're headed. We will come out the other side of this. You're not going to feel confident, but you might actually formulate some ideas. That's the time that you're going to rebirth. So point number 4, you have to rebirth yourself, whether you do it in this business or another business, or if you get yourself a job and then you start planning your next opportunity, you have to have a rebirth. So get clear on where you're headed for your mental health.
Nice example. Now, there's a question dropped in here from Darren, who's a sole trader, and he says, how low do takings or net profit have to drop before I get government support? What's the threshold?
Okay, I'll just chime in there. So he's exactly right that there's still an income test, and that's been a lot of conjecture out there. People, you hear them on the media, you lose your job, you go to Centrelink and you go out and you get support. Well, what happens in an example that I have at the moment is one of my clients works casually in a restaurant and she's lost her job, but her husband still is working for the government. And so can she go to Centrelink and go get some money? Well, not necessarily, because it's based upon household income. So there's a lot of, I guess, porky pies that are being discussed out there because it's not necessarily correct. Now, when it comes to the takings and net profit takings, well, you're just going to be on the same bandwagon as everybody else out there. So going to Centrelink, nothing's changed with job seeker minimum income. I think you can only earn a couple $100 a fortnight to get the maximum amount. So you're going to have to be based upon Centrelink. So go into your Centrelink website and have a look at that. So income tests are important. Asset test has been waived, so you don't have to worry about that. And waiting period has been waived.
You don't have to use up all your savings.
No. So as far as I understand, you're still going to have to ensure that your income is at the level of Centrelink support. And that's, unfortunately, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's pretty low that you're going to have.
I think it was in the 40s. I might be wrong, but I had a feeling it was in the 40s.
Yeah, so that's something I guess we can have a look
40
at.
meaning what? 40,000 a year?
Yeah, 45. Don't take that as gospel, but because I've read a lot of stuff.
So once your income's over that, you get nothing. Is that?
I think it's graduated, isn't it?
Graduated.
Yeah,
okay, so someone's jumped on there and said 48. There you go.
Okay.
And that's going to be potentially, I'd say that'd be household income. So that's not.
Thanks, Lee.
So for example, if the sole trader there, who's reduced his income, but his spouse partner is earning good income, I still think that's going to come to.
Great. And look, there's a few people put some comments in the chat there. It'd be interesting to hear from you. What's your experience been? Have you been able to go along and apply, or or you maybe know staff who've done that? What's your experience? It'd be great to hear your examples. Appreciate if you would drop something in there. Okay, so we might get on to state government assistance in a second as well, but just for both of you, I was surprised actually from our poll how few people have applied to ATO or to banks or pretty much anyone or landlords for assistance. Is this your experience, or are we just kind of waiting and hoping it's still going to change?
I think everybody's still in shock. I think, and it's a new experience. People don't know which way to turn or how to approach these things, and just approaching banks and ATOs and corporate departments like that. They're not known for being communication friendly. You know, they're as bad as Telstra. So they're not. It's not like they're inviting. So that's a challenge.
Have you had some clients who've done that? What's their experience been? Or are they still holding back? Well, the clients that are going through to the ATO, they're coming through me. So I go through, and Canio's got the same thing. We have a special portal for BAS agents and for accountants. So we sort of can go the back door, so to speak. And we've got phone numbers that we can shortcut. Numbers.
But anyone that's going via Centrelink, there is no back door. It's just a really, really bad experience. Expect to be on the phone for a few hours if you're not going into Centrelink. You don't want to be on
So some responses here from a few people. Emma's said, I asked the landlord and got 3 months free rent until July. Then we'll revise it again at that time. So, yeah, ask. Darren's...
Just be considerate there. There is a big push for... shaking the tree with your landlord. Just have a look at what sort of landlord you've got. You know, if you've got a big Westfield shopping centre and things like that, fair enough, I can get it. But you might have a landlord that's no different to you. Instead of buying a cafe and working in a cafe, they bought the tenancy and then they got a loan against their house to buy the tenancy. So that's their business investment, not the cafe itself. So you may not get flexibility from some formats of landlords.
Yeah, and they've got mortgages too, some of them.
Yes, and that's their retirement plan. That's how they're working towards their retirement. So just because they have an asset like that doesn't mean that they can afford to actually give you the rent relief.
So Darren said here that they made good money in 2019, so not likely to get support till the next period. And that's an interesting one. I think lots of people, you know, like if you average it over a year, it looks good, but actually it's fallen off the cliff in the last month. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I always thought that Centrelink was always prospective, not just retrospective. And I think that, so if a barista's lost his job and he was on $56,000 a year, and it's up to March, and say, you know, pro rata, he's probably earned 40-odd thousand so far. He's lost his job. I don't think it really matters what he earned last week or the week before, as long as his entitlements are being paid out. He knows that next week he's got no more money. I think you can actually, you know, claim. I can't see that
interesting.
The prior period has any issue, and that's where I believe that the government's looking at, you know, the tamper rate when it comes to the assets tests and waiting periods. I think that's where that comes involved.
You can also click a button on the MyGov website that connects to Centrelink, and if you don't have a CRN number to connect to Centrelink and all the
what's
faffing
the
about
CRN number?
It's a customer reference number that you have to have to be connected to Centrelink, and that's part of the problem. To get that number, if you've never used Centrelink before, you have to go into Centrelink or ring them up.
They've got to identify you.
Yeah, and both of those exercises take hours. They still haven't figured out how to actually allow that CRN number to be applied for online. You can do everything else online, you just can't get this magic number.
Sure.
And that's the barrier to the next step. So what they have put on the website now is it's like you reserve your spot. You can actually click on this link that says, I intend to apply for payments. And then they sort of take you into account and they say they'll get back to you. I don't know when they'll get back to you, but
you're in the queue.
Yeah, and you stake your claim from that date.
Right.
So go in and click. If you get denied, doesn't matter. At least you stake. You clicked on a date, and it's your starting date.
Yeah. So there's a question from Jane here. Staff are asking for a letter for Centrelink. What should I say and not say? As I'm technically can operate, but I've decided not to operate. I've decided to close. Any thoughts on that?
So I believe that the separation certificates aren't necessary now to apply for Centrelink. So if that's what they're asking for, I don't know why they would really need anything. If they just want a letter of comfort from Centrelink to tell them to prove that they have lost their job, then potentially that's the case. I think that, again, it's all to do with his income. If you've stood down that employee and that employee has got no other income, they've been very considerate, Centrelink, at the moment. They're not going to be asking you the third degree if you can let them know that you've applied for it, because they'll work it out anyway.
The reality is the person's lost their job, isn't it?
That's right.
Whether it's because the business could still operate or not, is they don't have work.
That's right. So if the employee has been stood down, there's going to be integrity measures put in. So if someone's rocks up to Centrelink and says, "Hey, I've got no work and I want Centrelink," and all of a sudden, they go and lodge a tax return and earn all this money, or they can see that they're earning all this money and double dipping, they'll get found out. So end of the day, I don't think Centrelink at this stage now, with this pandemic being crazy and affecting us all,
they're being a little kinder than previously.
100%. The ATO will be kinder. State governments have been kinder.
And I think, just on a political front, this is kind of dangerous or very new territory for the government that's spent, years degrading and despising Centrelink, and now almost everyone is having contact with Centrelink who never did before. They need to help people out there.
And never will want to again.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There's a question here from Shane. Can any support be provided if you're currently on a payment plan with the ATO already for IAS and BAS debt? So we're already kind of maybe for some reason or other having to pay something off. Is that going to be able to move? Are they going to be able to get some extra assistance?
So the cash rebate, the stimulus package, that will go into the integrated client account. So if you're paying off a debt with the ATO at the moment, it's not on deferral, but it is on a payment plan. So you're paying off a $10,000 debt on your BAS and you're paying $1,000 a month. When that stimulus package comes through, it will reduce the balance of that debt. So therefore you pay it out quicker. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, well, Shane can drop his comment in on that. I'm sure that's probably useful. Okay, now let's look at Canio's next slide. You've got 2 slides here for us. Now, Canio, your website, muro.com.au, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Just for people to, I think in the chat we've got mention of that link. And of course, the other way that people can connect with you and Chris is your social media activity. Facebook, I guess you both got, I know Chris has got a Facebook page and Canio you have. That's sort of the fast and frequent way to keep up with your thoughts and your discoveries. So just Canio, just your last pointers here. What do you mean about take stock there?
Well, I think what's important is that we're in business, and I think what people need to realise is that needed some sort of a cash flow. And I know that cash flow, people start rolling their eyes and how do you do that? But you don't need to be a CPA to do a little quick cash flow. And what I mean by take stock is where are we now? Where are we going to be and how are we going to get there? So what I'd be looking at is securing any revenue streams. So the first thing we do is what have we lost? What have we definitely lost? Like the guy who was going to buy the cup of coffee today, well, we're close. We've lost that sale. Okay, so that's gone. What is deferred? So what are sort of things that potentially, it could be that we've had a catering agreement, an ongoing catering agreement. Okay, well, you know what? We hopefully will get that back when we're back on track again. There might have been a function booked in for September, and it's not a very, it's a date that can be shifted. And the client said to you, hey, we're happy to shift it to whenever you open up. Well, they're what I call deferred revenue streams. And then the next one is, okay, well, now that we know what we're at, what can we do to create new streams? Okay, so that's what you need to do, because obviously the revenue is something that's being rocked at the moment. So we need to put things into those 3 categories and take stock.
And I think it's going to be interesting, and we're now doing twice a week with the SilverChef webinars, and I think in the next few weeks and possibly a month or 2, there's going to be an opportunity for lots more kind of, as we get over the shock and start to adjust to some new realities about business building and business opportunities that people see that are around. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, like you need to start getting a piece of paper and working out, okay, what are my fixed costs and what are my variable costs? Well, if I'm not turning over my stock levels, I don't need them, but I've still got to pay the rent and I've still got to pay various fixed costs. Well, the idea is that the next point, and this is something that Chris and I will talk about, is the funding opportunities. Like if we can't get anything from apprentices, can't get anything from this cash boost, well, we're going to have to potentially borrow our way out of this. But there's no point in going out and getting debt that's going to be unsurmountable. So we need to look at, okay, well, what can we do? How many fixed costs do we need to have that we need to fund for? And then you find the gap. So what's the gap between those things I just said about the revenue streams and the cost that we have to pay? I agree 100% with Chris about the rent thing. You probably have some landlords who are self-funded retirees, and that's their only income stream. So we need to understand that that's not the first thing we can cross off.
Everyone, take a deep breath and start feeling more kindly to your landlord about your landlord. So, in terms of kind of a positive question here, I've got one there that came in before about a business that is already doing microgreens and seedlings and all those sorts of things, and they've got suddenly zooming ahead with the demand for their product, and they need funding to grow, even in this climate. What do you suggest? How do they get funding when everyone is going to be looking at them, much more closely and much more pessimistically?
Well, I don't think
at banks, I think they'll get it better. I think now they'll get it better than what they would have 6 months ago, because the banks are going to be a little bit more relaxed because they're being considerate. But that customer will be a refreshing customer because they're not triggering a request for money based on COVID-19. They're triggering a request for money because of positive growth, and they can prove that their business is a valuable investment to the bank. That's my theory on experience with banks. Would you think the same, Canio?
I agree 100%. I think that you got to remember the banks and the government underpinning this whole economic situation. If there's no money around, people can't get by and pay their mortgages and so forth. So the biggest thing is that the RBA, with the government's, stick, has said, here's all this money, $80 billion or something, that they've given banks at cheap rates to go out and lend. And the government's securing 50% of that as a guarantee. So there's going to be plenty of money out there to get. I think the concern that Chris and I have with our clients is that you just don't borrow for borrowing's sake. Have some sort of a plan in mind. Now, to answer the question,
you still need the good business plan.
You do, but that's where you need to do what I just said before. Start working out what is this, what are the expenses that we have to actually endure to get to the other side of the bridge, and therefore can we then eventually start to be able to pay that back? Or is it going to be some massive backpack on us that we can never?
So a question here from Jane, who asked some questions before. Are there any benefits in deferring some of the outstanding account payments into the next quarter if you've ceased trading this quarter, or wind it all up this quarter? Now, Jane, I'm not sure you're talking about ATO accounts, or are you talking about payments to your creditors? But trade accounts. Okay, so trade accounts.
That's tough without knowing your circumstances. I think that's a very difficult question.
I guess it's about pushing the potential BAS payment over into the fourth quarter. Is that how you'd read that?
I'm picking up that means creditors. Do you think so, Canio?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, hey, well, let's just kick the can down the road a bit. Now, that without being rude, that can be irresponsible to certain extent by not paying trade accounts, because it can get you into all sorts of trouble down the road. So I think if you've incurred the expense and you've used the goods in your business, then I think you morally need to be paying those accounts.
We're talking about next week, aren't we? Which would be fourth quarter, I suppose.
Well, yeah, but I don't. Well, you think with accounts, you want to pay them if you're on a cash basis of GST to pay them up front to get the GST back.
Sure.
In the quarter. So if it's a GST issue, if it's just a cash flow drama, then by not paying your accounts doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to exist. They're going to be there.
I think I might be able to tie something else in here is with regards to the cashback stimulus. There's certain conditions around continuing to trade to trigger the second round. So if she's seen to be paying, if Jane's seen to be paying bills in the next quarter, does that mean that keeps her eligible for the stimulus because she seemed to be trading. That might be
Okay. Well, look, I think that might be something that Jane has to contact directly to one of you two, because I'd like to move on a bit. But it's a good question. I mean, this is the detail, isn't it? That, yeah.
That's what's tripping everybody up.
Yeah.
Actually, is the detail.
Yeah, and Lee makes a good point here that, you know, pay and talk to your suppliers, because they're struggling too. Oh boy, are they. The bottom's fallen out of their business as well. They're laying off staff also, and they you get a better response rather than just ghosting them and going silent on them. So,
and that's a good point. That rebirth, you're going to need your relationships behind you.
Yeah,
Stay in contact with your suppliers. Don't put your head in the sand. Keep communication open. Tell them that you feel like you're flushing down the toilet, but talk to them about what your active plan is, whether it is, I am going to close for 2 months, but I'm going to be in lockdown, but I'm coming back, and here's what my intentions are. But just keep up regular communication. Now,
Chris, I've got your slide up here. And you and I have talked in the last few weeks about, you know, when you do approach ATO or banks or whatever, and with your, you know, very genuine hard luck story, well, they're going to, you know, want proof, aren't they? Because you see sometimes you've got to prove you're 20% down or 40% down or whatever. What are you finding is the quickest way for people to get their act together for that sort of thing?
Actually, it's going to sound like a plug, but it absolutely isn't. It's the fastest money I've ever seen be thrown at hospitality is SilverChef. And it's not a plug as in, it just is. I've just seen it operate, and I've seen hospitality businesses try to get money out of banks, and they've just about got to give them their second born child to get through that process. So there is swings and roundabouts and different processes for what you need. I purposely rang my own business banking manager this afternoon to have a little chat, because I've been hearing some different conversations in the forums about how the banks are treating this process. Yes, they are deferring loan repayments, which means stopping the repayments for up to 6 months. But just note that there is a clause in the banking policies that on the 7th month, if they want to, they can exercise their rights to actually draw in that 6 months repayments to catch up the loan. So on the 7th month, you may have 6 months to pay back. Ask them if that clause is in that agreement. So it doesn't mean they'll exercise it. It just means they put themselves in the position of power to start moving on the next step aggressively if they want to shut you down. But keep in mind, banks aren't in the business of closing down businesses or taking assets. They want you to thrive and prosper because they make more money. So just something to look out for there. If you're already hanging on the edge of the cliff before this hit, you may just give the bank the perfect excuse to be able to wrap you up because they don't really value your business.
Sure.
So just be careful of that. So what was the question?
Well, it's just really getting yourself set up. And, you know, we've got stimulus round 2 and possibly it's round 3 this week. Right. And there'll be 4 and 5. And governments are being more generous with fewer conditions than, you know, we've ever known in our lifetime. But there's still, you know, the better you back up your case, you move to the front of the queue and you're processed quicker, aren't you? So how do we back our case up?
So the ATO, they do have some integrity rules in place as well, and I'm hearing that there's some people manipulating things out there. Mysterious employees are being created so the PAYG goes up and all sorts of crazy stuff. They do have a history of the way that your business trades at the moment, and they know how much PAYG you normally pay in the peaks and troughs.
Right.
So if that spikes in a strange scenario, they may look a little bit closer at what you're claiming. Having said that, right now, because people are being laid off and maybe holiday pays are being paid out, I would expect that this March quarter may spike in PAYG anyway. So it's not going to be a true indicator. If you're wanting to get your hands on this money fast, you have to lodge your BAS quarter or your BAS for this March, for this month. If you don't lodge that activity statement, there's no way you're going to get your hands on this money. All right, so what was the other point about that? Lost my train of thought.
I think the other point is where do we get the money?
Yep.
Now, the thing is, I mean, I've been working with a lot of the majors, and you got to remember that RBA has told banks to go and lend, but the banks, you know, they still have to create the policy and the products to be able to provide that to its customers. So we're looking at potentially April when, you know, funding can probably start. but a lot of banks don't actually have their policies started. But what you can do is that what they have pushed through, and I've already done it with my banks, and a lot of my clients have done it, is potentially put your payments on a 6-month holiday. So what I'm telling my clients in this particular case is, obviously you're just kicking the can down the road, of course, but you really need this cash flow. But a couple of things you got to think about when you do this. Number one, will it affect your credit rating? Now, APRA has put out a policy saying that it won't affect your credit rating, because typically these types of arrangements are hardship, and hardship goes against you on your credit file. So always make sure before you accept this that you ensure that you get in writing that's not going to affect your credit file.
Right, good point. Yeah.
Number two, see if they will add the holiday period as an additional time to the term of the loan. Because if you can imagine, if you've got a repayment holiday for 6 months, all you're doing is not paying the loan, and your interest is capitalising. But if the term doesn't increase by 6 months, when the repayments commence again, your repayment will be higher, because we'll be paying a bigger amount off in a shorter period.
Yeah. Good point. Another reason why we need some expert help in the negotiation with this kind of thing.
Yeah, but you just got to ask the banks the question, and don't just go out and accept anything. Just make sure that you speak to them about that. That's the first thing you should do. And that covers chattel mortgages. It covers your business van. It covers your personal home loan. It covers your business loan. So pretty much any type of finance can go on the 6-month holiday.
Jane's just also asking, is it better to pay out annual leave week by week or in a lump sum? Any advantages one way or the other?
You have to follow your award.
Okay.
I know
that leads on to your points here about fair work, Chris, too, because you're concerned that even though everyone's trying to do the best by staff, maybe there's some clumsiness the way people are put off, or you think you can stand them down. Do you understand all this terminology, etc.?
Nothing's changed at Fair Work. So if you wanted to dismiss somebody, normally you would have to give them notice if they're a full-time or part-time employee. Obviously casuals, you stop giving them shifts. You still have to follow what the instructions are under your award. You still have to give them notice. So if an employee has been with you for under a year, again, full-time or part-time, they need 1 week's notice or payment in lieu of that 1 week notice. If you're shutting down and you decide to dismiss your employees, you still have to give them pay out the notice period as part of your going out of business process. If you're going to stand your employees down, the full-time and part-time employees still accrue holiday leave and sick leave. So they have, it's called it's an absent without pay kind of process. So for that week, while they might not have actually earned any wages, they still accrue the normal hours that would go on the bank of holiday pay.
So I might ask, we'll drop the link into Restaurant and Catering Australia's Coronavirus Information Hub. It's an amazing resource they put together. Now, one of the main things Restaurant Catering has always done is give employment advice to restaurant owners, cafe owners. Now they're giving most of that away for free now. Really recommend you have a look at that. If we just could drop that link into the chat, there it is. It's amazing. That's our own SilverChef link, but there's another link there to the restaurant and catering one.
Fair Work doesn't have a lot of flexibility and change. There has just been some relaxations come through. I got on email this morning for the hospitality industry. Don't get confused if you see that email, because the hospitality award is different to the restaurant award. They're two different beasts and two different pay rates. If you have a restaurant or cafe and you're using the hospitality award, you will get pinged. Change it now. I've had to do a clean up from Fair Work for somebody who was using the hospitality award, and it's quite an expensive process.
Right. If we could just drop that link in, it's the last one on our list there, Restaurant and Catering Australia Coronavirus Information Hub. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Kyle. Beautiful. Okay. All right, we're coming to the end of our time, folks. If there's any more questions, Shane's made the comment there that applying for hardship about it won't affect your credit rating. These rules were changed some time ago. Look, everything's changed. Lots of things have been changed now because people who would never have applied for, use the word hardship and things like that. It's all very different.
You just got to confirm that though, because I brought it up, is that certain banks, haven't been able to be very clear upon that, right? So there's no harm in asking the question, although it's been announced by APRA, looks after these things, that it shouldn't affect your credit rating. I'd still would not want to go for a loan in 3 years' time.
Sure.
And this being a blot in your thing, so you can go show this to your ombudsman if there's ever an issue.
Good one. Okay. Now we might also just drop the links in. There's a couple more things there. Canio, you do a video update. It seems like every 2 or 3 days now, and your latest one will drop that link in the chat for people. It's about 12, 15 minutes, very informative. And wow, what a service. You're our brain on steroids for these sorts of things.
The idea is that, like, what you're doing, Ken, is amazing, because it's, and Chris as well. It's you've got to be one too many at the moment.
And Chris, if you could drop Chris Green's financial resource page in there as well. She's kind of harvesting all the best information and sharing it with people very
I actually can't keep up with it the last few days. I've decided the last few days to just pause a bit and then...
I'm a bit like that myself.
Yeah, then go in with some of the more just, the key basics of where to move forward, because it's just a rolling fast. But the point is, get your BAS in and claim that money. If you don't know how much you're entitled to, it's a bit of a complex calculation, but Canio, I can give you the answer on that. And then you've got some money that you can plan with that is definitely coming in a few weeks' time.
Terrific. Well, I think we're just about at the end of time, folks. Thanks. Lots of people joined the webinar, and everyone stayed to the end too, which is good. It's a sign of the quality of information we're receiving from Chris and from Canio. I really appreciate your generosity, because I know both of you are enormously under the pump, and none of us are getting as much sleep as we need at the minute. Thanks also to the SilverChef team who've been helping out, Sass and Valerie, Nikki, and Kyle. Really appreciate your support in the background there. It's been awesome. Don't forget, didn't get time for your spreadsheets, Chris, unfortunately, but don't
you
forget
should have, because that's interesting to see how much money you are actually getting back.
Well, look, everyone's going to be getting the slides from this.
I'll put it up on my
email, and you'll be getting a PDF of these, so have a look at those in detail. There's very good information there.
Yeah,
Thanks.
If anyone wants these things, I mean, we've built our own calculator that does that, so we're happy to share that with anybody.
Terrific. Okay, well, Canio, if you email me that link, I'll include that in what I send out.
Nobody cares how it's calculated. As in the calculations behind it. They just want to hit a button and say, that's how much I get. So if you can use that calculator, way better.
Magic. Good. Okay. Don't forget to check savehospitality.org. That's an initiative. It's driven by SilverChef. We don't keep any money out of it. It's all a way to pass on cash to sort of buy credit and future payments for your favourite restaurant or cafe. And just a huge thank you, everyone. We'll see you at the next webinar next Tuesday. We're talking all about landlords and leases. I don't know which is the hottest topic these days. They all are, aren't they? But anyway, Ken Burgin here. Thanks so much for coming along. And thanks for all the feedback from everyone in the chat too. It's very gratifying. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Canio.